My name is Katie Niemeyer, and I am interviewing Mr. Connie B. Freeman of Purvis about the Korean conflict. Mr. Connie B., my first question to you is, what was your rank and branch of service?
Okay, my rank in most of this period that we're going to be covering was AK-4, which is Navy storekeeper. That was when I was in Korea. Okay, later on, I stayed in the military 41 years overall.
Wow.
But when I was in Korea, I was an AK-4, which is a storekeeper. I took basic training at San Diego. I want to tell you one of the worst experiences I had never been aboard an airplane. I left New Orleans that day. I joined the Navy August of 23, 1950. Between New Orleans and Dallas, the plane caught on fire. And I'd never been on an airplane before. But anyway, it was a 4-engine plane, and they feathered what they call in Air Force, feathered the prow, put out one of the engines. And we went on in and changed. And then I went on to basic training at San Diego, went through basic training at San Diego, and that was my first 11 weeks of training in San Diego, California. Then from there, I got other that comes that I'll
Yes, sir.
talk about.
Yes.
And get a lot of extra info.
Where were you stationed?
Well, first I was stationed took basic training at San Diego, California. Then when I finished basic, I went to the Naval Air Station, which is across the island from San Diego. North Island, they call it. And that's where I was transferred to what they call supply, which was a big, on the base, we did many things involved. Okay, and that was where I was stationed in for the first, I went overseas in the first part, the latter part of the December of 50. No, 51.
Wow.
Okay.
What was your job while you were in Korea?
Okay, when I first got to San Diego, North Island, we called it, I was a storekeeper. My job when I first got there was to go, we had civilian, at that time San Diego didn't have a bridge across the bay. I went with truck drivers, civilian truck drivers around the bay, down into Mexico and then come back. And I picked up and signed, they did the truck driving, and I picked up and signed for all kind of supplies that we brought back and unloaded on about as far from here to the crossroads up there. And we positioned supplies on the ground. And then sometime during the week, aircraft carriers, which had about 8 planes, they had pilots that come there and went aboard those aircraft carriers. We loaded the equipment that they were going to use that weekend, training their pilots. And I did that from first part of 51 to the latter part of December of 51. Now, I had a brother that was called back in. Obed used to be over the hospital in Longington. And I visited him occasionally from San Diego. I met a lot of people that was coming, joining the Navy, and I'd see them and visit them. When Bill Sterling came, I visited him, and he was some kind of proud to see somebody that he knew. But that was, at that time, that was my job there, loading those, and then those carriers went out, and their pilots learned to land aboard the aircraft. And sometimes they'd have a wreck. And most of the time it wasn't injurious or nothing, but that's what I was doing until I got orders to go, and I went to, I had another brother that was in the Air Force at Point Magoo, California. I went by and visited him on the way to San Diego, California, what they call, where you went out from the, well, it's Treasure Island, they call it, at that time, and it's still, it's right there, it's up about 300 miles from San Diego. And then I caught a ship, 5 days of riding the water. That was my experience on my sea duty. Then I was transferred to a squadron, VR-21 they called it, and I went from there through Pearl Harbor, and then I went from there to Midway Island, which was in the South Pacific. And my job there, I had supplies that if they had items that broke down or something, I had supplies, tires, and different things. And my job at then was to issue those if I had them we had flights normally once or twice a week in the Midway Island. Midway is about a little over a mile square. I mean, they had made a real good mess hall there. And I met some individuals coming back home for discharge. So that was where when I got to Midway Island. And then other things okay, if you want to ask something else, we'll go from there.
Did you enjoy your work?
I did. We had, when I first got there, we weren't very busy. Like I say, we only got maybe 1 or 2 flights a week there. During World War II, they had moved a lot of tanks and all like that. They shoved them off of ships and everywhere, and they were outside the island. And we had opportunity, if we wanted to work there during the day. We could work 6 to 8 hours a week, and well, we were getting paid 70-something cents an hour. That was good money back then, in 1950, first part of 51. And I stayed there and for 6 months, and then I went to Guam, and I'll get into this later on about what I encountered. But I was still, we had those, the squadron had 8 planes, and they were used to transfer wounded personnel from wherever, Midway, in Korea, we'd pick them up in trains, which was, we were not in actual combat. We were picking up personnel that had been wounded and carrying them back to the hospital in San Diego, not San Diego, right out of Los Angeles. We carried them back there, and then they took them in. They didn't have at that time the real up-to-date flights that they have now, that these squadrons have now, that transfer them on helicopter, different things. So that's what I did for about, when our planes would get so many hours on them, we had to bring them back to the factory in San Diego. Well, I went at times when that point was reached to there, carry them back, kept up with how much gas was used during the flight. There was approximately 1,000 miles from Pearl Harbor, and then the trains, which was in Korea, there, and it took a lot of gas, and I kept up with how much fuel. I call it fuel, it's gasoline that they utilize, and that's what I was doing. If I wasn't with a flight going back, I was, we had to order parts for those airplanes, and that's, I helped look up stock numbers and order the parts that they used to keep the plane. They had mechanics with the squadron, but I was strictly still a storekeeper, keeping up with the there. And that's where I was at all this time. Well, like I say, I went to about 4 different squadrons. Okay, anything?
How many days were you in Korea?
I went to Korea the first part of January of 1951, and I stayed until May of 1954. That's and the thing about it, I didn't get to come home in 37 months. I didn't see anyone, well, any of my family, and that was, there was no need of me getting to San Diego, to the U.S. and then coming home and then just turning around. But I got paid for the leave that I didn't use while I was being there, and they, like I say, kept us busy.